picture a blood-red sunset in 1885 Arizona, where a lone cowboy, Caleb Holt, scarred by a mercenary past, halts before an Apache widow's defiant plea, "Kill me or marry me." Her eyes, heavy with grief, dare him to choose her fate. Once a silent witness to injustice, Caleb faces a reckoning. Save her or let the desert claim another soul. She's a marked woman, hunted for a truth that could burn a corrupt town to ashes. Will one choice spark justice or doom them both? This story's ending has left millions breathless, rewriting fate in ways you won't predict. Hit subscribe, share your city in the comments, and stay for the moment a single stand under a gray sky changes everything. Curious how a whispered vow outlasts a gunshot? Keep listening. The sun bled red across the Arizona sky, painting the dusty trail at Black Mesa in shades of fire. Caleb Holt, a cowboy with a mercenary's ghosts, rode slow, his horse's hooves kicking up clouds that hung like regret. His hands, calloused from years of rope and rifle, gripped the reins loose, but his eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the horizon. At 35, he'd built a life on solitude, the kind that kept old wounds quiet. The day was fading, the air heavy with the scent of sage and dry earth, when he saw her. A figure stood dead center on the path, small but unyielding, like a mesquite tree rooted against the wind. Caleb squinted, expecting a trick of the light, but she didn't waver. Nayeli, an Apache widow, wore a dress frayed by sand and time, her hair pulled tight, her face carved with exhaustion, yet fierce with something unbroken. She didn't flinch as his horse snorted, didn't step aside. Most women alone out here would have run, or hidden. Not her. He eased his mare to a stop, dust settling like a held breath. Her voice cut the silence, low and steady, each word a stone dropped into still water. "Kill me, or marry me." Caleb's chest tightened, his mind racing to parse the madness. Was this a trap? A fevered plea? Her eyes, dark and unblinking, told him it was neither. They carried grief deep as a canyon, but no weakness. This was a woman who'd stared down death and called its bluff. He swung down from the saddle, boots crunching on gravel, keeping his hands visible. The West taught hard lessons. Sudden moves invited trouble. "Your name," he said, voice rough as the land. "Nayeli." No hesitation. "Family?" "Gone." Her lips barely moved. "Husband's dead. Months now. No one left." Caleb's jaw clenched. He knew what it meant for an Apache woman to stand alone in 1885. The frontier didn't forgive the unprotected. It chewed them up, left no trace. He'd seen it before, in villages razed, and faces turned away when screams echoed. Back then, he'd been a hired gun, silent when orders turned bloody. Those memories were scars he didn't touch. "Why me?" he asked, scanning her for a weapon, a hint of deceit. "You're here." Her words were flat, but they landed like a challenge. "I'm tired of running, tired of waiting for the worst. So I choose." The weight of it pressed against him. Marriage wasn't just a vow out here. It was a chain, binding lives to judgment, whispers, and worse. Killing her? Easier, cleaner. But the thought turned his stomach. He wasn't that man anymore, or so he told himself. "I ain't decided," he said, fishing a canteen and a strip of jerky from his saddlebag. He set them on a flat rock, far enough to keep her from lunging. "Stay put," she nodded, unmoving, as he mounted and rode into the dusk. Her silhouette burned into his mind, a lone figure against the dying light, demanding to be seen. Sleep didn't come that night. The wind howled outside his ranch house, rattling shutters, carrying her voice. "Kill me, or marry me." He tossed on his cot, haunted by the question. What kind of man lets a woman's fate hang on a stranger's whim, Dawn broke cold. The sky bruised purple. Caleb saddled up before the roosters stirred, driven by something he couldn't name. The trail to Black Mesa felt longer, the air thicker. When he crested the rise, his blood ran cold. Nayeli's camp, a lean-to of sticks and canvas, was half ashes, charred edges curling like dead leaves. Boot prints, heavy and careless, circled the site. She stood beside the wreckage, a gash on her shoulder seeping red through her torn sleeve. No tears, no complaints, just that same steady gaze, daring him to look away. "Who did this?" he growled, dismounting. "Doesn't matter," she said. "They'll come again." He scanned the horizon, hand twitching near his revolver. Red Creek wasn't far, a town where secrets traveled faster than dust storms. Whispers had already reached him last week. Talk of a woman, a witness to a land deal gone rotten, a deal that left Apache blood on the ground and white men richer. Nayeli wasn't just a widow. She was a threat to someone with power. "You know something," Caleb said, not a question. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't deny it. Enough to die for. He stepped closer, the air between them crackling. "And you think I'll protect you?" "I think you're still here." Her words hit like a slug to the chest. Caleb looked at the burned camp, the blood on her shoulder, the boot prints leading toward town. Helping her meant stepping into a fight he'd spent years avoiding. But turning back now? That was a coward's choice, and he'd worn that brand too long. "I'll be back," he said, voice low. "Don't move." As he rode toward Red Creek, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows. Nayeli watched him go, her plea still hanging in the air, a spark ready to ignite or burn out. Neither knew the town was already closing in, its eyes sharp and its claws bared. Caleb's promise hung in the air as his horse's hooves faded into the heat shimmer of Black Mesa. Nayeli stood alone, the charred remains of her camp, a grim reminder of the eyes watching from Red Creek. The morning sun scorched the earth, baking the trail into cracked clay, but Caleb's words, "I'll be back," lit a faint spark in the widow's chest, one she hadn't felt since her husband's blood soaked the sand. By noon, Caleb was a shadow on the horizon again, his hat low, a coil of barbed wire slung over his shoulder. He didn't speak as he dismounted, just nodded at Nayeli and set to work on a sagging fence a stone's throw from her camp. His hammer rang out, each strike a quiet defiance against the boot prints still fresh in the dirt. Nayeli watched, her hands twisting the frayed edge of her shawl. This wasn't charity. It was a signal. Someone was standing guard. "You don't owe me," she said, her voice cutting through the clang of metal. Caleb paused, sweat beading on his brow. "Ain't about owing. It's about what's right." She studied him, searching for a lie, but found only the hard lines of a man who'd seen too much. That evening, as the sky burned orange, they sat by her rebuilt lean-to. Words came slowly, like water from a dry well. Nayeli spoke of her past, forced to translate for white men in Red Creek, her tongue twisted into lies that signed away Apache land. Her signature, scrawled under threats, had cost lives, including her family's. Shame clung to her like dust, but she didn't bow her head. Caleb listened, his eyes on the fire. "I rode with men who burned villages," he said, voice low. "Didn't pull the trigger, but didn't stop 'em either. That's my weight." The confession hung between them, raw as the desert wind. Nayeli nodded, not forgiving, not judging, just understanding. Two souls, scarred by choices they couldn't undo, are now tethered by a single stand. Days bled into each other, Caleb's presence a steady rhythm. He fixed posts, checked traps, rode the perimeter, his silhouette a warning to anyone lurking. Red Creek took notice. At the saloon, men muttered over whiskey. their glances sharp when Caleb passed. A storekeeper, voice oily as axle grease, asked if he'd taken up with that Apache woman. Caleb's silence was answer enough, but the town's patience was thinning. One dawn, as coyotes howled in the distance, Caleb found a broken gate on his ranch, 30 head of cattle gone. Hoofprints led nowhere, but the message was clear. He rode to Nayeli's camp, finding her sharpening a knife, her eyes scanning the hills. "They'll come for you next," he said. "Let them," she replied, her blade catching the light. That night, under a moon sharp as a sickle, Caleb stayed late, his rifle across his lap. They spoke of small things, her husband's laugh, the way sage smelled after rain, building a fragile bridge over their pasts. But trouble didn't wait. At midnight, hoofbeats thundered close, then stopped. Caleb gripped his gun, motioning Nayeli to stay low. Shadows moved beyond the firelight, but no one struck. Come morning, a note was nailed to a fence post. "Leave her, or lose everything." Caleb burned the paper, his jaw tight. "They're scared," he said. "Means you're dangerous." Nayeli's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Good." He doubled his patrols, riding closer to her camp, his tracks a dare to Red Creek's cowards. In town, the air grew heavier. A rancher friend, voice low, warned Caleb of whispers. A land baron named Voss, whose hands were deep in the old massacre, wanted Nayeli gone. Her knowledge of the deal, buried in papers she'd kept, could ruin him. Caleb bought extra ammo, his gut telling him the next move wouldn't be a note. One dusk, as the sky flared crimson, Caleb found Nayeli by the creek, washing blood from her hands. A dead rattlesnake lay nearby, its head crushed. "Found it in my bedroll," she said, calm as stone. "They're getting bold." Caleb's fists clenched, his mind flashing to Voss's men, their laughter in the saloon. "You're not fighting alone," he said. "Not anymore." She met his gaze, her eyes fierce. "Then don't make me regret choosing you." As stars pierced the black sky, Caleb rode back to his ranch, the note's ashes still smoldering in his memory. Red Creek was closing in, its claws sharper now. Nayeli sharpened her knife, her camp a lone spark in the dark. The fight was coming, and neither would back down. The stars above Black Mesa burned cold as Caleb rode away from Nayeli's camp, her final words, "Don't make me regret choosing you," cutting deeper than any blade. The night swallowed him, but the weight of her trust clung like damp leather. Dawn crept over Red Creek, gray and heavy, the town's streets stirring with the clink of spurs and the mutter of men who knew more than they said. Caleb's choice was no longer his alone. It was a fuse, lit and hissing toward a reckoning. He found Nayeli at her camp, mending a torn blanket, her knife within reach. The air smelled of creosote and coming rain, the horizon bruised with clouds. "They're watching closer now," Caleb said, his voice low, eyes scanning the hills. "Voss ain't playing subtle." Nayeli's hand stilled. "He wants my silence. Always has." Caleb crouched, picking up a shard of flint, turning it over. "Then we make him hear you." His words weren't a promise of safety. Those were cheap in Arizona's dust, but a vow to stand firm. That night, under a sky spitting lightning, he laid it bare. "Marry me, not for love, for a shield. It'll force him to face you, not just hunt you." Her gaze held his, steady as granite. "I keep my name, my past. No one owns me." "Done," he said, the word a contract sealed in the storm's rumble. Red Creek didn't wait to strike back. At the general store, a clerk's sneer followed Caleb as he bought nails. "Heard you're cozy with that Apache," the man said, spitting tobacco. Caleb paid and left, but the words trailed him like wolves. By week's end, a local official, all polished boots and false smiles, rode to his ranch. Folks are concerned, Holt, he said, eyeing the horizon. That woman's trouble. Best keep clear. She's under my protection, Caleb replied, his tone flat as iron. The man's smile tightened. Protection's a heavy load. That night, a gunshot cracked the dark, the bullet splintering Caleb's barn door. He bolted outside, revolver drawn, but found only hoofprints vanishing into the scrub. Nayeli, alerted by the sound, appeared at dawn, her face unreadable. They want you scared, she said. They'll want me dead. Then we don't blink, Caleb answered, hammering the door's splintered wood, each strike a refusal to bend. If you're gripped by this fight for justice, hit subscribe. It's a small act, like a nod across a campfire, keeping stories like this alive. Share them, and let's stand together against the odds. Days turned brutal. Caleb brought Nayeli to his ranch, not to hide, but to work, mending tack, tending horses, her hand steady despite the town's growing hiss. Ranch hands watched, some nodding, others turning away. One, a wiry kid named Tate, left a tin of biscuits by her side, no words, just a glance. Nayeli took it, her silence louder than thanks. But Red Creek's claws sharpened. A fence was cut, wire twisted like entrails. A water trough was fouled with ash. Each act screamed the same warning. Back off. Caleb rode into town, his temper a coiled rattler. At the saloon, Voss's men lounged, their smirks daring him to swing. He didn't. Instead, he met with Old Man Granger, a rancher with a reputation for fairness. You're stirring a hornet's nest, Granger warned, his voice gravelly. Voss owns half this town. Marrying her. You're painting a target. I ain't asking permission, Caleb said, leaving with a nod. Back at the ranch, Nayeli faced her own trial. A group of women, wives of Voss's allies, passed her camp, their whispers venomous. Squaw doesn't belong here, one hissed. Nayeli stood tall, her knife flashing as she carved a stick, the blade's glint answering enough. But alone, under the mesquite, she felt the noose tightening. The breaking point loomed. Word spread of a hearing in Red Creek, a sham to brand Nayeli a liar and drive her out. Caleb heard it from Tate, who'd overheard Voss's men plotting. They're saying she's a thief, stirring trouble, Tate said, eyes wide. They'll run her off, or worse. Caleb found Nayeli by the creek, her silhouette stark against the fading light. They're coming for you, he said. A setup. She turned, her face a mask of resolve. Let me go, Caleb. You'll be free. He stepped closer, the ground crunching under his boots. Free ain't worth it if it means leaving you to wolves. Her eyes softened, but only for a moment. The storm was here, and neither could outrun it. Red Creek's judgment was closing in, its verdict already written in blood and lies. Red Creek's verdict hung over Black Mesa like a vulture, circling, waiting for Nayeli to break. Caleb stood by the creek, her words, "You'll be free," echoing against his refusal to abandon her. The air tasted of iron, a storm brewing in the slate-gray sky. He knew Voss's hearing was a trap, a noose dressed up as justice. Nayeli's shadow stretched long beside him, her silence a steel thread binding them. They weren't running. Not now. The next dawn broke heavy, clouds choking the sun. Caleb rode to Nayeli's camp, finding her packing a small bundle, knife, flint, and a battered journal. "What's that?" he asked, nodding at the book. "Truth," she said, tucking it under her shawl. Her eyes, sharp as obsidian, held no fear, only purpose. "Voss's lies, names, dates, I kept them." Caleb's gut tightened. That journal was dynamite, enough to bury Voss and his cronies, or get them both killed. "Keep it close," he said, checking his revolver. "They're coming today." Word of the hearing had spread like wildfire. By noon, A crowd gathered at Red Creek's dusty square, men with rifles leaning against saloon walls, women whispering behind gloved hands. Voss, in a tailored coat, stood on a makeshift platform, his voice smooth as snake oil. "This woman's a liar," he declared, pointing at Nayeli as she and Caleb approached. "A thief, stirring chaos. We settle this now." The crowd murmured, their eyes hungry for a spectacle. Caleb dismounted, his boots thudding on packed earth, and stood beside Nayeli, her chin lifted, unyielding, though her fingers brushed the journal hidden at her waist. "Say your piece," Caleb told her, voice low but carrying. Nayeli stepped forward, the wind snapping her shawl like a flag. "You call me a liar," she said, her words clear, cutting through the crowd's hum. "But you know me, Voss. You made me sign your papers. You took our land, our blood, and called it progress." She pulled the journal free, its pages yellowed but damning, and held it high. "Here's your truth. Every name, every deal." A ripple ran through the crowd. Voss's smile faltered, his hand twitching toward his hip. "That's nonsense," he spat. "She's a squaw with a grudge." "Then read it," Nayeli challenged, tossing the journal onto the platform. It landed with a thud, dust puffing like gun smoke. A man in the crowd, a grizzled prospector, stepped forward, squinting at the pages. Whispers grew louder as he read aloud. Dates of land sales, signatures, sums tied to Apache deaths. Voss's men shifted, hands on guns. But the crowd's mood turned, doubt creeping in like a shadow. Caleb stayed close, his gaze locked on Voss's enforcers, 3 men with scars and cold eyes. "Don't," he warned one, his hand steady on his revolver. The man froze, sensing Caleb's years as a hired gun weren't just stories. Voss's voice rose, desperate now. "She's a traitor. She'll ruin us all." But the prospector kept reading, his voice carrying names of men still in the crowd. Faces paled. A rancher cursed, turning away. Nayeli stood tall, her presence a blade slicing through years of lies. Then chaos. One of Voss's men lunged for the journal, knocking it into the dirt. Caleb moved faster, shoving the man back, his fist cracking against the man's jawbone. The crowd surged, some shouting for order, others for blood. Nayeli grabbed the journal, clutching it as Voss's men drew iron. Caleb stepped in front, his revolver raised, not firing but daring them to try. "Back off," he growled, his voice a low thunder. The standoff held, taut as a bowstring. The prospector, still clutching a page, yelled, "This is real! I knew her kin! Slaughtered for that land!" His words tipped the scales. Half the crowd turned on Voss, their shouts drowning his protests. His enforcers hesitated, then lowered their guns, sensing the tide shift. Voss, red-faced, spat a curse and stormed off, his power crumbling like dry clay. Caleb and Nayeli stood shoulder to shoulder, the journal safe in her hands. The crowd dispersed, some nodding to them, others slinking away. The storm broke, rain spitting on the square, washing the dust clean. "It ain't over," Caleb said, holstering his gun. Nayeli nodded, her eyes on the horizon. "But they saw me." As they walked back to their horses, the rain cold on their skin, Red Creek felt different, fractured, its secrets exposed. Voss's threat lingered, a rattlesnake coiled in the dark. But for now, the truth had held. Caleb glanced at Nayeli, her shawl soaked, her face fierce. They'd faced the storm together, and the fight wasn't done. The rain had stopped, leaving Red Creek's streets slick with mud and the air sharp with the promise of trouble still coiled in Voss's shadow. Caleb and Nayeli rode back to Black Mesa, their horses' hooves churning the earth, her journal tucked safe against her chest. The town's fractured silence followed them, a brittle peace won by truth, but not yet secured. under a sky heavy with unshed storms, they knew the fight had only paused, not ended. Morning light spilled over the ranch, painting the corrals in gold and shadow. Caleb and Nayeli stood before a weathered oak, its roots gnarled as the land itself. No preacher, no crowd, just them, the wind, and a vow spoken plain. "I stand with you," Caleb said, his voice rough as gravel. "Not to own you, to face what comes." Nayeli met his eyes, her shawl catching the breeze. "And I with you. As for myself." They clasped hands, her calluses matching his, sealing a bond forged in defiance. The sky stayed gray, no fanfare for a marriage that Red Creek would never bless. Life turned harder, not softer. Voss's allies struck from the dark, fences slashed under moonlight, a calf found dead with no marks but malice. A surveyor, Voss's puppet, arrived with papers, claiming Caleb's eastern pasture for unpaid taxes. The ranch shrank, its edges carved away like flesh from bone. Old friends drifted, their nods replaced by turned backs. Tate, the young hand, stayed loyal, but even he spoke less, his eyes wary of unseen threats. Nayeli moved to the ranch, not as a guest, but a partner. She rose before dawn, her hands learning the rhythm of chores, oiling harnesses, stacking hay, reading the sky for rain. Her presence was quiet but sure, like a river carving stone. The hands watched, some grudging, others softening. Tate shared coffee one morning, muttering, "You're tougher than most." Nayeli's nod was her only reply, but her shoulders eased, a weight lifted. Red Creek's scorn didn't fade. At the feed store, a clerk shorted Caleb's order, smirking. "Your squaw's bad for business," he said. Caleb leaned close, his voice a low burn. "Next time, I count every sack." The clerk paled, but the message spread. The Holts weren't breaking. Nayeli faced her own gauntlet. A group of ranchers' wives cornered her at the creek, their words sharp as barbed wire. "You don't belong," one spat. Nayeli straightened, her knife flashing as she trimmed a reed. "I'm here," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. The women left, but their glares lingered. That night, she sat under the stars, her journal open, tracing names of the lost. Caleb joined her, silent, the space between them warm with unspoken trust. Small victories grew. A neighboring rancher, weathered by years of Voss's greed, tipped his hat to Nayeli at the market. "Heard what you did," he said. "Takes guts." She nodded, her lips twitching. Not a smile, but close. The ranch hands began to shift. Tate laughed when Nayeli outroped him in the corral, and an older hand, Grimes, left a repaired bridle by her bunk. Respect wasn't given. It was earned, hard and slow. One dusk, as the sky flared with the last light, trouble stirred again. A rider delivered a letter, Voss's handwriting, offering to buy Caleb's land for half its worth. "Leave or lose it all," it read. Caleb burned the paper, the flames licking his fingers. He found Nayeli by the barn, oiling a saddle, her hands steady. "He's circling," Caleb said. "Wants us gone." "Let him try," she replied, her eyes glinting like flint. "We've faced worse." That night, they sat by the fire, the crackle of mesquite a quiet defiance. Nayeli spoke of her childhood, of songs her mother sang under these same stars. Caleb shared his own past, orphaned young, building the ranch from nothing, fearing loss more than death. Their words wove a thread stronger than fear, tying them to the land and each other. As weeks passed, the ranch changed. Nayeli's touch showed in small ways, a mended gate, a herb patch by the bunkhouse. The hand spoke her name without a sneer. Caleb felt it too. His days were no longer just about survival, but about purpose. One evening, Nayeli looked at him, the firelight soft on her face. "I thought my life ended with my husband," she said. "Now it's mine again." Caleb's throat tightened. "And I thought standing alone was strength. I was wrong." Under Black Mesa's endless sky, their bond grew. Not loud, but deep, rooted in shared scars and stubborn hope. The future wasn't safe, but it was theirs, built on a choice to stand, not run. What did you feel when Caleb and Nayeli chose to stand together against Red Creek's shadows? Their story, forged in dust and defiance, reminds us that courage can reshape even the harshest frontiers. Drop your thoughts below. Did their choice spark hope or doubt for you? I'm grateful you rode this trail with me, sharing the weight of their fight. Until we meet again under Black Mesa's stars, keep seeking stories that stir the soul. If you're hungry for more tales of grit and truth, let me know what you'd love to hear next. The West is full of whispers waiting to be told.